Blessed are all of you who come here for the sake because of honoring Don Kortz and Rabbi Shalom. May he be remembered for blessing and peace to his soul and to his family. I got a call shortly after Don passed from Judge Ken Laff. He said, Rick, can we have the service at Temple Sinai, though Don Kortz was a proud member of Temple Emmanuel for so many years. But lo and behold, he said that unfortunately the sanctuary there is under renovation, and we can't accommodate the crowd that will be here to honor them. And so Ken, of course, is Judge Laff, is one of the cousins, and he's the son of Pearlie Ray, who's also a member of Temple Sinai. Pearlie Ray's in California right now. I told her that we'd make sure to mention her. Ken was not only, Pearlie Ray is not only first cousin of Don, but they were like brother and sister. And so this Bima for this morning is temperament. It's my honor to be able to hand it over to my colleagues, Rabbi Joe Black and Rabbi Steve Foster, for this sacred occasion. The heartbreak of not being able to have the service in your own place is understandable, but there's something as well appropriate about it. Because Don, yes, was a proud member of Temple Emmanuel, but he was a community leader. And his loss is mourned by the entire community. And there are people of all faiths, Jewish and Christian and Muslim and all backgrounds, who know that Don Kortz stood by them and fought for them. And we're going to hear loving and wonderful tributes. So as Temple Sinai has transformed this morning into Temple Emmanuel, we welcome those here. Our heart breaks along with you. Mary Lou and Zoe are, we say through the prayer that all say to those who are in may God comfort you along with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Rines. We so appreciate this difficult and sacred gift of generosity. We begin with the 16th Psalm. Shiviti Adonai lenegit ami, hinini ba'al emot, lachen samach libi, vayagel kivodi adbesani ishkon lebetach. Ki lo ta'azov nafshi lishol, lo titen chasidcha leroshacha, Todieni orachai, so asmachot et hanecha, mi'imot bi'mincha netzach. I have said the eternal always before me, God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore, does my heart exult and my soul rejoice, my being is secure. For you, O God, will not abandon me to death. Nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is a gift. Death has taken beloved Donald Lee Kortz. And our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of so many loving friends, those who are here in person and those who are watching via live stream. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For God's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we share along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and the gifts of his mind that brought joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, listen to the voice of our sacred scripture that brings us the ever new message of God's nearness. It tells of our kinship with the Creator and life as in darkness, light as in darkness, and joy as in sorrow, life as in death. In the 15th Psalm, we find words that could very well have been written for and about Kortz. The psalmist writes, Adonai, God, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless, but honor those who are their God, who give their word and come what they do not retract, who do not exploit others, who never take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. In the words of the 23rd Psalm, some of you have the text in front of you. I'm going to chant it in the Hebrew and then ask that you join with me in the English following Hebrew. Adonai ro'i lo echsa, v'no deshe yarbitzin yalminuchot yinahaleini, nafshi shovev, yancheni b'ma'adlei tzedek l'man shemo, gam ki elech b'getz ha'mavet lo yira'ra, ki ata imadi shivtecha m'shamtecha, Ema yenachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorai, dishanta Hashem ben roshi, kol sir maya, achtoda chesed yidefuni, kol yemei chayai, v'shavti bevet Adonai, le'orech yamim. Together, God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yishem Adonai v'orach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to any of us, and yet centuries have taught us that the Keter Shem Tov, the crown of a good name, endures beyond the grave, that there is strength in faith. And so with Job, and like Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, given, you gave us will not be forgotten. And for all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. God, you have taken. Pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love. As we now say, blessed be the name of God now and forever. And finally, in the words of Ecclesiastes in chapter 3, we find that for everything there is a season, time for every experience under heaven, time to be born and a time to die, time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, A time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time for tearing, a time for sowing, a time for silence, and a time for speaking. My friends, now is both a time for silence, a time for remembering, for holding on to the memory, legacy of a great man who did so much for his family, for his profession, for our community, for our world. So we're going to take a few moments to remember. Now is also a time for speaking, a time for sharing and celebrating and paying tribute to telling the story of his life. So we take a few moments now of silent prayer as we remember. L'orazione may feel it, may surrender the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. There will be several tributes to Don this morning, and to call them up in the following order. First, representing some of his dear friends and partners: Joe Blake, Andy Love, Doug Jones, and Tom Murray, followed by a video from someone who loved them very much, his future son-in-law Joel from England, followed by a beautiful letter from his daughter Zoe that's going to be read, and it's Liz Lunsford. Joe, Andy, Doug, and Tom.
Good morning. I'm Andy Love. Don was my friend, my colleague, and even my roommate over the course of almost 50 years. Today, I want to share with you an even closer brotherhood we found 13 years ago, following a way too similar tragedy. Don and the four of us got together for dinner just to share a friendship and just to share and take care of each other. The next 4 or 5 months, we on a nearly almost traditional way managed to have dinner together, and from the happy conversations arose awareness of a shared fascination with the history of this great nation, particularly of the American West. So we decided to go see it. We've taken about 25 journeys, half including our ladies, across the country. Yes, the historic sites were really just an excuse to be together to talk about things great and small and to enrich a bond. Oh, if you're wondering, we did from time to time stop for a beverage. When Don was diagnosed with melanoma, he had to miss a couple of trips as he spent those miserable weeks quarantined in the hospital. He wanted to be with us again this past May as we immersed ourselves in our nation's war of independence. With the encouragement of his doctor, he joined us, and the laughter was again heard ringing from the Hudson Valley. We learned a lot, but what we really came to understand was a bond of brotherhood that celebrated the only thing in life that mattered, and that's true friendship. I know you all know this, but but Don was a healer. He knew how to get you to talk about your troubles, and inevitably it led you to the solution. To do that, you had to catch him, of course, between naps and tinkle songs. He knew every public restroom in all college. He brought his incredible sense of humor, his wisdom, his caring, and his interest in all of us, our families, and all that mattered to our little band of brothers. And as you all know, he always steered the conversation to you, not him. Don was fundamental to why the entire experience was so very special. Life is so much better when we were around him. We're committed to using the strength we drew from all that we shared in developing Mary Lou and Zoe just as Don took care of us.
Thanks. Well, as Andy has so well captured, this special friendship, this married band of brothers, this is one of our most precious treasures, this friendship. From the ruts of the Oregon Trail to the ramparts of Fort Ticonderoga, we traveled, we've been touched, we've been blessed. You've seen some photographs of us in our iterations of travel. The last one, the last of the pictures taken of us was at Dartmouth College, Hanover, New Hampshire, my alma mater. And we are standing in front of the iconic Baker Library. The five of us, crossroads. And it is not only iconic, but it's ironic that there were words written about Dartmouth 1,000 miles away, 100 years ago, that really fit in this fragile moment, in this temple site. And so I'm going to quote some of those, and Mary Lou and Zoe and Bob, for you and for others. Dartmouth, there is no music for our singing, no words to bear the burdens of our praise, but how can we be silent and remember the splendor and fullness of her days? Who can forget those soft September sunsets? Who can forget those hours that passed like dreams? Dartmouth undying like a vision starts, miraculously builded in our hearts. And so it is for us, it seems to me, to find those words that could bear our praises for the fullness and splendor of this life of his. And yet our grateful hearts shout out how thankful we are to have celebrated this time with him, to have had our own soft September sunsets, our own special memories. And in the process, Kortz was miraculously build it in our hearts. Oh, he could take a complexity of a Rubik's Cube in a real estate transaction, or to try to start or vitalize an organization. He could sweep away the quirky corners of our own little nooks and crannies. And as Andy said, he was a healer. He brought comfort to me 14 years ago in the loss of Elizabeth. But more than what he did, it's how he made us feel. Andy said it. Life was just better with Don Kortz. Oh, the unevenness of life found balance when Don was there. Life was just more fun. And in the process, miraculously build it in our hearts. Like the rocks at Gibraltar, tossed back, surf time. There was one more moment that we spent together on the Hanover campus, the Dartmouth campus. After we took that picture, we drove by the Theodore Geisel Medical School. Another Dartmouth guy, you know him, mostly as Dr. Zeus. And one of his alleged comments was, for moments like this, don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. We are linked in love, but more than anything, we're linked in laughter with God. We lived with one of the better angels of our time. And I'm not just referring to his husband. Don Kortz. Miraculously and joyously build it in our hearts.
Thank you so much. Now we'll have a tribute from his future son-in-law.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Elijah. I am the fiance of Hayley Zoe Kortz. Today we are here to celebrate the life of Don Kortz, who was father to me. Don was a special man. Don was an angel, a friend, a father, a humble person who helped others grow. He always put everybody else first and made sure they had what they need when times got tough. He always found a way, even though others couldn't find a way, to help and to proceed the task of the project that was being asked of him. He made me feel very accepted from the moment that I met him, along with Mary Lou. He accepted me as a son very young, and hearing his voice through my head now, even saying good morning, calling me a son, was a privilege, was a blessing, and I miss you. Don was a good friend to many people, especially people in this room. Throughout the time I spent with him the past 2 years, he was a really good friend to me as well. We went on many trips, we spent countless hours together, and he taught me a lot about myself, not just about how the Kortz family lived and their presence, but he helped me to become a better person, and that was one of his best qualities. I remember him coming home from work and myself and Haley would be waiting on the sofa, ready to grab his briefcase and his jacket and ready to receive him. So happy every single moment I spent with him. And we laughed, we had fun together. Don loved to host parties, as many of you know, and used to love mixing drinks, drinks that I'd never heard of, drinks that I don't even think still exist, but through his eyes it was always perfect, through my eyes it was always perfect. And I'll never forget those moments as long as I live. What I loved about Don was he was one of the most caring people that I've ever met in my life. And as many of you know, you can probably see that through Haley and Mary Lou. The day that I asked to marry his daughter, he was the first time that he called me his son and accepted me to the family. And I will forever carry your name in your presence. And I look forward to it. I look forward to telling my children and their children who you were, an amazing and wonderful, talented man. Don was a father to me. He literally treated me like his own son. That was part of his family. During the pandemic, there were many difficult times where we would be facing hours of waiting in queues, uncertainty of whether I needed to return back to England, food shortages within the country, in the local area, and he would always have an answer. He would always make everything okay. He would always make you feel like nothing was wrong. He always knew the right thing to say. Best of all, he was really, really, really funny, and as many of you know, he always knew the right thing to say in the right moment, in the right time. There was never a doubt with Don. He was just an angel, and he lived a prosperous and wonderful, great life. Even during his, even during the past few years, I remember when he hired me as his barber. I used to cut his hair on a fortnightly basis, and he said he would sack his previous barber just to hire me. I used to shave his beard. I used to clean his face, and through the tough times when he was in hospital, I would pray every single day for his safety and well-being. And I pray for you now as well. I know you're looking down at all of us, every single person in this room. I know you stand next to me, stand next to Mary Lou, stand next to your brother, stand next to your daughter through the good times and the bad times that we will be facing in the near future. I promise to look after your daughter till my last breath. I promise to look after Mary Lou till my last breath. And I love you, my father, my friend, my everything. Thank you for everything, Don. Rest in peace.
Good morning. I have been asked by my sweet husband Zoe to read this beautiful letter that she wrote to her father. Dear Daddy, to the world you may be one person, but to one person you may be the world. This has always been my favorite quote when I think about you. To the world, you are a great businessman, philanthropist, community leader, and mentor. But to me, you have always been far more important than any of those titles. Daddy, you have been the center of my world. I know God handpicked me to be your daughter. From the second I was born, we were inseparable. You and I have always understood each other in a way no one else could. We've always had our special language of silly faces, wrinkly noses, and raised eyebrows. One of the things I loved most about you was your goofy side. When I was young, you nicknamed me Monkey, although I think it was you that was the real monkey. I want you to know how much I loved you and how you would always play with me. You were truly a kid at heart. Remember how we used to play Pretty Pretty Princess? The girliest girl board game. You would let me put on any number of necklaces around your neck and clip on earrings on your ears. And then when I got into my hairdressing phase, you would let me try out any number of hairstyles on you. Of course, I knew all you really wanted was a head rub. As I got older, I started to understand more what you did for work and how often you had to give speeches. When I was 11, I remember you working on your acceptance speech for the Meisel Institute Community Enrichment Award. And I came up to you and I said, "Hey, Dad, why don't I just write that for you and you can read it? It can't be that hard." And of course, Dad, you agreed. You got up there that night and proudly read the speech that I had written for you. Not only were you not only were you not embarrassed to read what my inexperienced self had written, but you were proud and you told everyone that night that you had my help. Dad, you always showed me the highest level of respect when I was a child. You always considered all my ideas and opinions, warranted or not, because of the way you fostered my confidence in sharing my ideas and opinions as a child. I was able to become the woman that I am today. Your competence and calmness in any situation is so strong that it made those around you feel like they could do anything. Another side of you that not everyone got to see was your dedication to your family. When I was just a baby, you often came home late from work. By 8 o'clock, Mom had already bathed me, read me a story, got me in my jammies and tucked me in. But as soon as you came in the door, you dashed up the stairs, picked me up, full of antics and tickling me all over. We'd be laughing and giggling in your room, and Mom would come up saying, "Don't get her excited, I just got her down." But that's who you were, Dad. You were a husband and father before anything else. I remember one Halloween, a friend and I had the grand idea to be what we dubbed a fat man. We convinced Mom to go out and get us the largest clothes she could find so that we could each fit into one pant leg and one shirt sleeve. Of course, when it came time for trick-or-treating, we discovered we couldn't actually walk in this costume. So you patiently pulled us around in a wagon all night. Dad, you never missed one of my sport games or any event at school. You even coached my teams. I remember when I really got into soccer. You would insist on being a lineman for every single game. These games were more like social events for many parents to catch up. But that's not how you were. You were there to watch the game and cheer us on. No matter what sport or subject I wanted to do, not only were you there 100% of the time, but you made sure you researched and found out everything there was to know about it so you could help me better. When I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease as a teenager, you joined the National Crohn's and Colitis Board. You wanted to be on the front lines of any new treatments or research that came through. I don't think I ever fully thanked you for doing that for me. And then when I had my surgery in New York a few years ago, you were by my side every moment. It was over Christmas time, and the day I was released from the hospital, we walked into the hotel room, and you had a Christmas tree set up. You had purchased a tree on the street and hauled it all the way to the hotel. When we arrived, it was all set up at the stand with water and decorated with tree lights. Dad, I will never be able to tell you how deeply I have loved you and always will. You are everything to me, and I can't wrap my head around going forward without you. I see you in everything I do. Every day I think of something funny that happened that I want to tell you, or a question I need your advice on. You have been my mentor since day one. After a few different career paths, I finally came to my senses and followed you into real estate. I will be forever grateful to you for being my guiding light in this new field. I especially want to thank you for welcoming Joel so warmly and openly into our family. I know he considered you a father, and he became a son to you. I love watching your bond deepen. I know how much you enjoy going to Steakhouse 10 with him, making drinks and sitting on the patio together. I know how happy you were to finally have another man in the house after years of dealing with us girls. I am so grateful that Joel got to know you and see what a wonderful man you are. I cannot tell you how deeply he respects and loves you. I will wear the ring he presented me proudly, knowing that it was in your hands first and bears your mark. Daddy, thank you for always supporting and loving me unconditionally. You, Mom, and I were always a team and will continue to be forever. I keep reassuring Mom that because I am half of you, she will never be without you. The impact you left on us and on this world is unforgettable, and I will spend my life carrying on your legacy. I love you forever, Daddy. I will miss you, and I think of you every day.
Such beautiful tributes. To Mary Lou, to Zoe and Joel, Robert, Gary, Kathy, Greg, and Kim, and Susan, Ken, and family and friends all. This is a poem I don't often read by Maya Angelou, but I think it bears listening this moment. She wrote, when great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory suddenly sharpened examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wisen. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms slowly and always irregularly. Space is filled with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be. Beat and be better, for they existed. We all know that Don Kortz was a talented businessman, lawyer, philanthropist, community leader, and mentor to many. His resume is long and impressive, and yet Don was so much more than the many accolades that he has deservedly received. To those who knew and loved him, and to know him was to love him, Don was a source of strength, compassion, principled leadership, and caring that transcended simple categorization. That's why Angela so powerfully wrote, Don Kortz was a great soul, whose presence will be felt long after all of the tributes that we can heap upon him in the morning, fade in the distance. We've heard the most important activities in Don's life did not revolve around his community activities. He was a family man who was never happier than when he was surrounded by his beautiful wife, daughter, brother, and the circle of friends who became family throughout their years together. He was selfless, he was humble, he was brilliant and funny, he was a lifelong learner whose focus and discipline allowed him to achieve greatness while at the same time being passionate about helping others to succeed as well. And his passion for service made a huge difference, not only in the greater Denver community, but around the world, as he dedicated his time and resources to helping research cures for Crohn's, colitis, and many other diseases and social causes through his advocacy and involvement. Don was born on July 9th, 1940 here in Denver. His parents, Benjamin and Juliet, raised Don and his older brother Robert in a home that stressed the importance of community education and giving back. Don's father, Ben, owned Kortz Jewelry on 16th and Champa, a Denver legacy institution. Robert, you shared with me that your brother was a cute little guy. And even though he was a magnificent orator as a kid, he thought he'd never make it to third grade. He couldn't even pronounce or remember his home address, 523 Hudson. I had to keep reminding him. He was always caring, even as a young child. He had so many friends, and at East High School, he was so popular. He was on the tennis team, he played golf. He even tried boxing as a young boy. He had one fight, he was undefeated, and he retired on top. He graduated from East High School in 1958 and went to Tulane and then DU for law school. Then he went into the Army. He served in the Transportation Corps. He had an office job as an adjutant to a commanding officer in Germany, and he handled everything with aplomb for the office. He retired after 2 years as a captain. He came back to Denver and he went to work for a law firm, which at that time was called Fader Morris. In a very short time became Fader Kortz. During his time at the firm, he did legal work for John Fuller and Company. John was so impressed that he asked him to come on as house counsel. He started in the mid-60s and didn't leave until he went to serve the Rose Community Foundation. At Fuller, he began as counsel, then he became president and CEO. When he left, he was chairman of the board. He was always passionate about his work, and he cared deeply for those who worked with him. Marilee, you just shared a story with me last night about how during the recession of 1987, when the economy was in free fall, Don was CEO of Fuller, he was responsible for payroll. He told you that he would not be taking a salary. He wanted to make sure that everyone else would get paid before he did. That was the kind of man he was. He was quiet about it, I didn't tell him. It was just the right thing to do. Don's life was forever changed in 1981 when he rented an apartment on Capitol Hill. He was living in an apartment that happened to have a washer and dryer. It's very fancy. And his apartment was directly below a beautiful flight attendant named Mary Lou, who, unbeknownst to Don, had an arrangement with the manager that she could have access to that washer and dryer anytime she needed it on a moment's notice because of her flight schedule. But when Don moved in, he didn't know about this arrangement, and Mary Lou left him multiple notes. You mustn't let me use your laundry machine. He never responded. Finally, she came and knocked on his door. He invited her in, and she was prepared to give him a piece of her mind. But when she saw him, she was awestruck. He was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. He was pretty impressed with her as well. He offered her scotch. She'd never had scotch before, but she took it. They went on their first date together. It was a picnic. They were going to ride their bikes, but she had a flat tire on her bicycle. So he took her to the gas station and carried her bike and managed to fix the tire. But the next day he called her from Rose Hospital where he had hurt her back carrying her bike. They couldn't drive for 2 months, which was awesome for her because she got to drive this really cool Jaguar and chauffeured him around. 6 years later, on July 25th, 1987, they were married in the Fox Memorial Chapel in the Indian Village. They were devoted to each other and they doted on each other. So you shared how your parents had the perfect marriage. So many adventures. In your honeymoon, you crossed the horseback road through Spain. You traveled throughout Europe together. Mary Lou, you lived in France and taught English in a small French village, and so you had a knowledge and a love of France, and he himself loved it. And they traveled in little villages and pretended that they lived there. It was your dream to have a little place in France. And his favorite thing to do was to sit in a cafe and pretend that he lived there. He didn't speak the language, but he learned how to order a beer. That was enough. It was England or Morocco or Honduras. You scuba dived, you had adventures, and who could forget the hot air balloon rides? There was so much nerve-wracking. Your soulmates in every sense of the word. Mary Lou, when your beloved Don was leaving us, you kept telling him that he was the one and only, that everything would be okay. He died on your 34th wedding anniversary. In Song of Songs, chapter 6, we find the following: Whither is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whither is thy beloved turned him, that we may seek him with thee? My beloved is on the mountain's garden, of spices to feed the rivers and to gather lilies. Vila do diva do thee, I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine, that feedeth among the lilies. Early today, grief. We grieve with you. You've heard what kind of father he was, so he's beautiful, touching tribute. He was always fully present and available, even though he had so many responsibilities. He had that special language, so he didn't need me to talk one eyebrow raise. He never missed your games. He was fully present. When he was with you, he was not a type of industry. He was your dad. Mentored you in real estate, but more importantly, he mentored you in how to be a mensch, how to be a good person. You wore clothes from Swanee, the University of the South. So proud of you. Whatever you did, he partnered with you, challenged you, and celebrated life with you. You had so many, many wonderful friends as we've seen. He was incredibly loyal, and they in turn were loyal to him. Don kept in touch with all of his friends, whether they were from high school, college. He saved and savored and held on to every friendship he ever had. And he continued making friends until the very end. He cared deeply about others. He loved to entertain. Yes, he was a great bartender and a great host. Those dinner parties, Marilyn, you were the gourmet chef. He was the concoctor of the drinks. He found out that his niece Kathy loved Chardonnay. Whenever she came, he greeted her at the door with a glass of Chardonnay. He used to host huge Passover Seders. And there were many non-Jews. Jim Blake, we heard from, studied up on the Seder one year and asked him some really difficult questions that he couldn't answer, which really drove him nuts. So the next year, he had a huge book on Jewish history with Post-it notes so he could answer every single question. His community involvement was legendary. Not only did he have the desire to give back, but he had the ability to do so With his many successes in life, whether real estate or charitable boards, he had the intellect to make a difference, and he did. He was a mentor. He believed in his mentees. He showed them the way. And many of you who are here today achieve your success, leadership and mentorship of your beloved Don Kortz. Few tributes that were sent. Mo and Doug Wolf wrote the following to Mary Lou. We are so very low tonight, Mary Lou, as we've learned that you're a gorgeous human of a man. Don is transitioning this life. You know you are broken into many million pieces, and knowing that breaks our hearts even more. You are the love of Don's life, and he will forever be the love of your life that has always been evident. He meant so much to so many that our personal heartache may seem small or far away relative to his and your closest friends and associates. His passing is immensely painful in the scale of our lives. Don was incomparable in Doug's life and in mine. He was the finest, no question, on every level. He chose you because you are the finest and completed his being superbly. Doug and I are both enamored with you independently and as a couple. You are inspirations of living, loving, giving, and achievement. I'm sorry to text you in the night. I need to let you know our prayers for Don, you and Zoe are deep and constant. We love you so and always will. Heavy hearts and our deepest love, respect, and gratitude. We say goodnight to your handsome prince and our great friend. Don puts all of our love to you, Mo and Doug. Ray Baker sent the following message when Don was near the end. Knowing Don as I do, I'm sure that he would be so worried for his two precious girls. No man has ever adored his wife and daughter more than my friend. He so cherishes his fairy tale marriage with you. Hopefully, this special and unbelievable bond will provide some comfort and strength for you and Zoe. My friends, in the Talmud, we read that according to Rabbi Yehuda, there were 10 strong things created in the world. Rock is strong, but iron cleaves it. Iron is strong, but fire melts it. Fire is strong, but water quenches it. Water is strong, but clouds bear it away. Clouds are strong, but wind drives them. Winds are strong, but humankind resists them. Humans are strong, but fear casts us down. Fear is strong, but wine casts it out. Wine is strong, but sleep dissolves it. Sleep is strong, but death is stronger. But love is the strongest of all, for it survives. So for a life that is well lived, a life filled with meaning, caring, love, and friendship, a life dedicated to service and making our world a better place, we could shalom Don Kortz. Zichrono livracha. May his memory be for an eternal blessing, and let us all say. Call on Steve Foster to move down.
Poet has written, birth is a beginning and death is a destination. Life itself is a journey, growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and from youth to age. From innocence to awareness and from ignorance to knowing. From foolishness to discretion and then perhaps wisdom. From weakness to strength, or from strength to weakness and often back again. Health to sickness. Back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love. From joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion. From grief to understanding, and from fear to faith. From defeat to defeat until looking backward or ahead. We see that victory lies not at some high place along the way. And we make the journey stage by stage. Simple pilgrimage. Birth is the beginning. Death is the destination. Life itself is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage from birth to death. Life that is blessed. Another family difference. Hope you'll permit me just a few moments to add to the very, very beautiful words that have been spoken about our friend. Many of you are colleague and mentor, family. Give me just a few moments to add to these very beautiful words. I came here 51 years ago. When I think about that, and I do this very often, when I think about that, I think about the fact that Don was not the 81 he is now. So he was about your age. He's a young guy. He has always been so respectful, so kind. I wouldn't say we were great buddies, but we were friends. I didn't travel with him as you guys did, but we talked from time to time. He was a kind and gentle soul. He was always down, and even at 30, I was always around. He never called me by my first name. He was respectful, not of me necessarily. He was respectful of what it was that the rabbit stood for. And maybe, Bobby, got that from you and from your parents, from this wonderful family, which is. For all of us, there is a time, and this becomes the collective sorrow. As I look out and see most of you wearing your mask, I'm reminded that this last year and a half has been very hard. Don understood that, but now he has become a statistic. It's terrible, terrible disease. We understand that. And I think one of the things that he would say to all of us, forget the politics. If you haven't had your shot, get it. And when you're in places that people ask you to wear a mask, wear it. Because we're in for the long haul, as he would have liked to be. And perhaps because we knew him and we cared about him, and he knew us and we loved all of us. Perhaps we will be better because of him. Perhaps we'll take something of who he was and make it a part of who we are. There's so many wonderful words spoken about him today and what he did for me. What he did was because of who he was, the kind of person he was, the kind of person he always started to be. So your words truly summed up what today's all about. So taking the qualities of a person's life, taking them and internalizing them, making them a part of who you will be as days progress. And as you and Joel said, pass it on to the next generation. That's the way to give immortality to one who has lived so well. To be sure, our task, when all is said and done, is to give words of comfort to you as family, so that you can move forward, even understanding who he was. I often say at moments like this that there are tasks to perform, and there are. You have to grieve, you have to wonder about the miracle of birth, but the mystery of death, and what that means to us as individuals. And it means something different to each of us. Remember who he was. We have to carry on because he did what he did. And I want to add a fifth. My black chanted 23rd Psalm beautifully. Is there any wonder why we use it at moments like this? Because it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I learned a long time ago from one of the teachers when I was in medical school. The King David, who wrote the psalm, wasn't trying to give comfort, he was trying to challenge. And what he was trying to say to you is, don't get stuck in the valley of the shadow of death. Walk through it. Yes, shed your tears. Yes, feel badly. Yes, feel that sadness that you most assuredly feel. And as you do so, continue to walk through that valley of mistakes. And you will continue to live your lives. Our world, our state, our city is better because of him. And not just because of what he did, but because of who he was. And here's some of the qualities that I took away from his life. He was generous, not just with his means. He was that. He was generous with his spirit. He gave of himself. So that all those organizations that he was a part of could be better, and so that they could fulfill their missions. And that's what he was about. He was kind. He was selfless. He was sweet. He was a cease. There was a ceaseless about him. He was very sweet. Even tempered. He was a sustainer of life. He was always going and doing. Not for himself. All these organizations that he tried to help. He had so many ties because of the family legacy and the small legacy of this community. Well known. And he cared of them. He was open to all of us. Rich, poor, black, white, thin, fat, straight, gay. He understood. In Genesis, it says that we are created with Salam Elohim in the image of God. He understood that innately, that each of us is special, no matter who it is that we are. He respected that. So he told everyone, he was always there, he was present. What a great quality to give to another generation. The human side of life was important to him, and he was not judgmental, but he was a great problem solver. A total involvement for so many things, in so many ways in which all of us are better because of him. These were the ways in which I remember him as a person, so that he could do what he did because of who he was. Like so many of you, I feel that I too lost a friend. Someone that I could always look to and say, perhaps these words from an unknown poet to me, perhaps they'll be helpful. So maybe you can call upon these words at some time in a distant future, maybe not so distant. Maybe children. The poet called this the messenger. Then closer than ever before, as the morning sun rises and throughout the busy day, I'm with you. Until the setting sun disappears on the horizon and we watch the day turn into night, I'm here. You may feel a faint breeze stir around your head while you slumber as I gently kiss your forehead. The stars that shine so brightly in my heavenly sky help me watch over you and keep you. I am the wind in the trees and the song of the bird. I am moonbeams in a midnight sky and the glorious rainbow after the storm. I'm the morning dew and a freshly fallen snow. I'm the butterfly flying overhead. a little doggy, happily. And the smile on the stranger's face, a gentle touch, a warm embrace. Listen to the wind for my message of love. Watch the sun rise and set in the sky with me. Feel my essence encircled with warm memories. Open your heart to me. I am not gone. Reach deep into your soul. You'll find me. I am here. Have no fear. I am with love. I believe that we're not here to say this. It's for love of him. All of these years, we love together. Trees over. With this deep, abiding commitment of love. For all of those generations, this family has given so much. We pray that God extends his arm of comfort to you. That you all find strength. That you all walk through. God show. Meine Tango, meine Kraft, die Schäme, meine Worte. God is given. God is taken away. Praise be to the Lord. Now and forevermore. It's also fair.
We pray that the memory of Donald Lee Kortz might endure among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your light we shall see life. In life and in death we cannot go where you are not. Where you are, hope endures. So sustained by this assurance, we invoke your name, Almighty God, as I ask us to rise as we are able for the El Malay Rasamim prayer for this. El Malay Rasamim Shuhein Hamedohi Amtsei Menucha Nechona תחת כנפי השכינה, אם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת יקירנו, שהלך לעולמו, בעל הרחמים, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen. Passionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Donald Lee Kortz, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. He rests in peace, and let us all say, Amen. The family has asked that I let you know that you were invited today only from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. The sharing of memory stories, light refreshments at the Denver Country Club? Or the Cherry Creek, thank you, Cherry Creek Country Club. There will be a service at the end of the evening where we will have an opportunity to say cottage.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our service here at Temple Sinai. We'll ask you to remain in your places as we escort the casket and the family to their cars. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have an escorted procession if you'd like to join us at the cemetery for interment. Inside those handouts are some instructions for our procession. What's most important is if I can ask you to please return to your cars as quickly as possible, as soon as the casket and the family have exited the sanctuary, and start lining up. We're going to use the same entrance and exit that everyone else is going to use. So those who are not going to the cemetery, maybe we can ask you just to give us a few minutes so we can get on our way to the cemetery.
I'll ask you to please refrain from coming forward and trying to speak with the family. It will delay their process and getting to the cemetery. If I can invite those who've been asked to be pallbearers here at the sanctuary to come forward at this time.
My Lord, Lord, from the flesh, but singing and the foot. You shall break and think on heart, and shall make none. Until then, the days of Mother, always are asked to come. Keep the foundation of that, and move. Santa Hashem, Lord, she proceeds on that. That's it, the food, holy, make the guy. Shall be the big of the night, or if you mean. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. That makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, and restores my soul. The leading right paths for the sake of your name. Yea, though I walk through the valleys of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. The rod and the staff will comfort me. Paraclete before me and presence of my enemies. Anointing my head back, oil my cup over. Through goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life.
I'll be in Alaska for a week.
We'll all wait to hear from you.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seemed like
Just for the accent.
Yeah.
It feels good. Yeah. Yeah.
that's the in the summertime. It's chilly. I know we have a place down in Florida. Yeah, that's so good.
Do you snorkel?
I snorkel. I sometimes I've got a boat inside the house. Play a lot of golf.